What's up, football heads? Welcome back to that show. As always, I am your host, Kyle McQueen. We're here on a Let Me Talk to You Tuesday on the heels of Week 5. Some big breaking news today. We'll start with that.
Let me talk to you.
The Jets have finally fired Bob Saleh. I've been calling for it for weeks. I've been calling for it for years. Listen, Robert Saleh is an excellent defensive coordinator. He's a great developer of talent on the defensive side of the football. He's great at what he does when it comes to defense, but when it comes to being the head coach of a football team, the head of an organization, he is a bum, a bozo, and an absolute buffoon, and he should not be in this position. They should have fired him before the season. They should have fired him before the previous season when they brought in Aaron Rodgers. This was bound to go sideways. The only reason they stuck with him this year is because they decided they were going to stick with him now that he finally had a quarterback, and then Aaron Rodgers gets hurt after 4 plays and he's got to play another year or coach another year with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle. So they were like, we can't fire. If we fire him now, then we're admitting we should have fired him before last year, which they should have fired him before last season because he's not a good head football coach. He's just not. He's not. He can coach the hell out of some defense, but I'm telling you, he is a bum, a bozo, and an absolute buffoon when it comes to leading an organization as a head football coach. And everyone's acting shocked today, like literally everyone, media, people I've talked to, they're stunned by this. And I genuinely, I'm shocked that they're shocked. Have we not been making fun of the Jets now forever? What have they done? What has he done? What has he done as the head football coach of the New York Football Jets of New Jersey to justify still being the head coach at this point in time? Win 7 games, coach a great defense. That's it. You got an elite defense, a defense with championship caliber potential. And you're handling the offensive side of the ball by, number one, knowing how trash Zach Wilson is and how he has put you on the hot seat, and your inability to build around him on the offense and develop him as a quarterback has put you on the hot seat. You get Aaron Rodgers. You don't consider for 1 second that he might get injured. We need a better backup quarterback than Zach Wilson, who we know is probably going to get everybody fired. Just in case. The only other quarterback, they go and get Tim Boyle, who threw more interceptions than touchdowns in college. Not just in the pros, in college. And yet somehow found his way onto multiple NFL rosters. Tim Boyle also sucks. Just absolutely sucks. He wasn't even a good college player. It's not, you can't point to him like you can point to any player that's underperforming in the NFL and say, well, he was an elite college player. This is just, it's the elite of the elite of the elite, and he's not elite of elite of elite. He's just the elite of the elite. Tim Boyle wasn't even that. He sucked in college. He might have sucked in high school. I have no idea. But it was a flawed construction from the get-go. They stick with it because the organization doesn't want to look stupid. And then they still end up looking stupid, firing him after 5 games. But nobody should be surprised by this. There's absolutely no reason to be surprised by this. He sucked. He was not a good football coach. They won 7 games because he's a great defensive coordinator, and they acquired the right talent. He developed, and him and his staff developed the talent, and he calls an elite defensive game. And you have an elite defense, you're going to win some football games. They had some great upsets last year. Can't take that away from them. But at the end of the day, He's not good. He's not a good head football coach. All the chatter behind the scenes, and everyone likes to point the fingers at Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is pointing the fingers at other people while saying that there's people pointing fingers, and there's all this finger pointing going on. And you can blame whoever you want, but at the end of the day, Bob Saleh is presiding over a team and a culture where you have accusations of people leaking game plans to the opponent. That's on his watch. When that happened last year, it was like, to me, you got to get rid of this guy. He clearly, the players might respect him, the defensive players might love him. You know, he's a man's man, that he can speak to these guys, but organizationally, he has absolutely no command. Absolutely no command. The culture is a mess. There were warning signs all over the place. They should have just got rid of him, got a fresh start, fresh culture with someone else. The defense is already built. Yes, he calls a great defense, but it's already built and developed. All you need is find someone to be the DC. If you hire an offensive head coach, find someone to be the DC that can call a good defense. That's all you need at this point. You don't need someone that can develop and install some complex scheme. Like, they've already been built and developed. But then also on the flip side, you got Aaron Rodgers, and for whatever reason, his strange love affair with Nathaniel Hackett, who, to be fair, did his job well in Green Bay, but you also have to take into account that Hackett, as an offensive coordinator, you had Matt LaFleur calling the plays, and I clowned Matt LaFleur at the time, but you look at what Matt LaFleur is doing now. I don't think it's deniable that Matt LaFleur is at the very least a pretty damn good football coach, knows how to scheme, knows how to call a damn good offense. So you have him above Hackett, so Hackett's not even calling the plays. And then you have Aaron Rodgers, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback, throwing the ball. So, like, I described this earlier. I was talking to a friend of mine. It's like bowling with bumpers. You could throw a ball it's going to be an egregious, terrible gutter ball, but it hits one bumper, bounces off, hits the other bumper, and just bounces off the bumpers back and forth all the way down the alley, and you get a strike. But you take the bumpers away, and it's an egregious gutter ball. And that's what happened when Nathaniel Hackett went to Denver. And now with the Jets, he's calling the plays. Aaron Rodgers is not peak Aaron Rodgers. He's 41 years old. We can't expect him to be. I saw enough as a Vikings fan who has seen him terrorize us for decades. I saw enough vintage Rodgers in there in Sunday's game to feel like there's still some juice in the tank. He's certainly not washed, but he's not peak Aaron Rodgers. And then you don't have Matt LaFleur. You don't have a head coach who's calling the offensive plays to take the pressure off you. Nathaniel Hackett, he also sucks. And so they got other problems. Like, this is not solving the Jets' problems, but it's certainly solving part of the problem, because Bob Saleh, as your head football coach, is a problem. And it's never too late to do the right thing. It's never too late to get out from under a mistake. Now, you could argue this is a terrible time to do it. They have the London game. They got to come back, turn around. They don't have a bye this week. I believe they play on Monday Night Football against the Bills. It's a very important game that if you win it, you're now first in the division, but you're coming back from London. Extra difficulty with mentally recharging, physically recharging, readjusting to the time zones. So you could argue this was a bad week to do it, but at the same time, I just, it's been a long time coming. I don't know why anyone's surprised by this. Anyone who's acting surprised by this, it's fake outrage, and they might just be trying to convince themselves. I don't know why. But everybody's surprised by this, and it's shocking to me that anyone is remotely surprised that this dude just got fired. But part of the reason he got fired is because they lost again, and they lost to the red hot, white hot 5-0 class of the NFC, my Minnesota Vikings, yet again come out with a big win. At first glance, it seemed like a similar story to the Packers game. They were up not as big. They had a 17-0 lead and were poised to get the ball back, forcing the Jets to punt from their own end zone, where there was a, by the letter of the law, correct call of roughing the kicker. But when a guy lands and slides and then kind of rolls and just glancingly touches the kicker's plant leg, like, I think we might need a little more subjectivity in there. I nothing about that screams roughing other than by the letter of the law. If you touch the plant leg, it's roughing the kicker. So it is what it is. You got to accept it. But then they go on a touchdown drive, 17-7. Game gets a little bit tighter there. Jets got the ball, down 6, chance to go in, win the game there at the end. Gilly Lock, Stephon Gilmore comes away with a huge pick. So you look at the Vikings-Packers game from the previous week. They almost blew a 28-0 lead. It got tight at the end, came down to an onside kick. So you could say, well, what's the problem here? Why are the Vikings now all of a sudden, after dominating teams for 3.5 quarters, why are they falling apart in the second half? And this happened a little bit in 2022 when they went 13-4, but the defense was atrocious in large part because of Ed Donatel that season, whereas the defense this year, like even in the Packers comeback, even like at the end of the day with this Jets game, they only gave up 17 points. So it was much more of an offensive issue going up against an elite Jets defense than an issue with the defense like squandering a big lead. Because again, like there's a ton of special teams penalties that played into it, the offensive woes. So in rewatching the game, I still felt very comfortable about the defense. I didn't really feel like they gave up 3 scores, 2 touchdowns and a field goal. But like, I mean, if you could give up 17 points a game over the course of a season, like you'll take that. You're going to win a lot more games than you lose. And I mean, they had Rodgers on his ass the entire game. I've seen memes. There's at least 3 different memes that are either video or a still shot from that game, different plays, different moments in time of Rodgers just writhing in pain that had been turned into memes. That like they were hammering him constantly. They lead the league in pressures, second in sacks. They're the second best run defense in the league by basically every run defense metric to the Ravens. Now it's a smaller sample size because they have built these big leads, so teams are throwing a lot more. So you're not as tested on the ground, but at the end of the day, like by all the metrics, they're giving up 3.6 yards a carry. Limited touchdowns given up. Let me pull that up here real quick. But even with the small sample size, they're clearly playing very well. They're tied for the least amount of rushing touchdowns given up with the Steelers and Giants. They've only given up 1 rushing touchdown all season. And then passing defense, they're top 5 or 6 in pretty much every category except passing yards allowed, which is, again, because it's the other side of the coin that they're not facing a lot of runs because they have such heavy leads, but they're facing a lot of passes. But yards per attempt, they're 6th. Completion percentage, 6th. So I'm not as worried about the yards when like it's the yards are coming because of volume. All the other numbers look good. They lead the league in interceptions with 11. They're averaging over 2 interceptions a game. They've given up 8 passing touchdowns to 11 interceptions. So Vikings moving right along, man. The offense looked rough. Sam Darnold going up against his old team. Again, Jets, great defense. But there were some questionable things in there that, you know, if it becomes a trend, because again, the offense really didn't do much in the second half against Green Bay. They only scored 3 points. And then of the 23 points they scored here against the Jets, 7 of them was Andrew Van Ginkel with another pick six. I say this is a side street, but saw a graphic that Andrew Van Ginkel has more touchdowns this year than it was like a list of people. It was like Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, obviously who's been injured, Devontae Smith, but a bunch of like top level guys, weapons on offense. That Andrew Van Ginkel has scored more touchdowns. An absolute menace. The dude, I don't know what he's figured out. He's hinted that his 1 year with Vic Fangio in Miami, that Fangio gave him like the secret sauce to figuring out these looks where like you're either gonna blitz or drop, and like some tell that Fangio gave him where now he's picking these balls off and taking them back. Just fantastic. But the offense, we'll see. Again, so 23, 7 from the defense. So, you're looking at 16 points, 19 points in the last 6 quarters that the offense has put together. So that's not good. That's not good. That's got to get figured out. Granted, the Packers defense is playing incredibly well, and the Jets defense is playing incredibly well. So struggled a bit against some elite defenses. So that's something to pay attention to down the road as you get more toward playoff time, where like you're gonna be playing good defenses. Can this Vikings offense kind of figure it out? They also, Aaron Jones went down with a hip injury. Hopefully he's not gonna be out for a long time, because Ty Chandler, man, his numbers when he's the guy are always bad, but there's always at least one play where he goes for like 40 yards and it gets called back on a penalty from, it's an illegal shift or a hold on the backside that had nothing to do with the play. Every time he ends up as the lead back, he's got like a 40 or 50 yard carry or a screen pass that gets called back on not some bullshit, but it's just like, really, whoever got the penalty, really, like, come on, man. But the offense seemed to be in a much better rhythm with Aaron Jones than Ty Chandler. And Ty Chandler's got some wiggle. He's explosive, good cutting ability, but Aaron Jones is just, he's a Pro Bowler for a reason. Packers fans sang the blues, might still be singing the blues about losing Aaron Jones, and now I understand. Like, I know what it was like to be tortured by him as a Vikings fan on the other side, but now having him out there, like, you on a down-to-down basis, just what this guy brings to the team. So that's unfortunate, but the Vikings, regardless, the defense just pounded Rodgers. They couldn't do anything in the run game, and aside from a few vintage Rodgers magic plays, Vikings defense pretty much handled business. I feel like they got to be the best defense in the league right now. I don't know who you're going to give me that's better. I know there's a few teams out there that might be on that level, but I don't think there's a single defense in the league that's better than the Minnesota Vikings right now. And that could take you a long way. So if we get Aaron Jones healthy, have a good run game, defense that can stonewall the run, turn the ball over through the pass, and just confuse quarterbacks and find a way to continue doing that, they got a ton of potential, and they should still continue to be, if not as dominant, because they haven't lost a game, like top level dominant through the season. And then when you get to the playoffs, it's a different story, and we got to reevaluate and start picking nits a little bit in there and see if they can get the offense figured out just to be more consistent, because they come out, I think they're at 48 or 58 unanswered points in the first quarter. So like they're just coming out and just hammering you, offense and defense, in the first quarter, and building these leads where then, not that they can coast, but they got you where they want you. They got control of the game. The defense can pin its ears back. They're in control of the game flow. And the other team is forced to fight from underneath, and they don't have the full complement of their playbook, because you're down 28-0. Like, at some point you got to kind of abandon the run. Like you got to get some chunk plays in there somewhere. Special teams, though, was not good, with the exception of Will Reichard, who has been fantastic thus far. But ton of penalties. Jay Ward, another penalty. The roughing the kicker penalty on Ivan Pace. Caleb Evans, a big penalty. Just too many penalties on special teams that led to or helped lead to points for the New York Jets. But Vikings, man, still doing their thing, still undefeated. The Chiefs still undefeated. Good win against the Saints. I warned you about the Saints. I did not pound the table, but I said, listen, let's not get too excited about these Saints. Let's see where they're at come October. And now we're to October, and they look like a much different team. Defense still looks very good. Defense still looks great, but offensively, they're just, once again, they've fallen apart. But Chiefs finding a way to win, played excellent defense throughout the game. Juju Smith-Schuster stepped up big time. Just not a flashy or crazy dominant win for the Chiefs, but just a good solid win. Both undefeated teams, finding ways to get it done. So congrats to the Vikings. Congrats to the Chiefs. 5-0. Not 5-0. Team that I would have declared the best team in football 2 weeks ago. The Buffalo Bills, now losing 2 in a row. Much ado about the end of that game and the decision for 3 straight passes, not run any clock, and 3 straight deeper passes. I think Josh Allen got concussed when when his head slammed against the turf. I was like, oh God, he's done. He's done for the day. And they're fucked. But then he came back out there and they said it's a chest injury, and then someone said it was an ankle injury. It's like, that ain't no ankle. That's a head slamming off of the turf. But I'm not as concerned about the Bills, I feel like, as a lot of people are. A lot of turnover on the roster, so like it's not always going to be easy. You have to work some things out. They kept themselves in the game. The Texans could have ran away with the game. It was leaning that direction, but the Bills' defense stepped it up in the second half. Offense worked its way back into it, despite Josh Allen probably being concussed. Questionable decision-making on the end. I'm going to try and get the Buffalorian back on the show to talk to us from the Bills fans' perspective, because I know they are not happy with Sean McDermott. I've preached more patience with McDermott, but there exists the possibility that he's at his glass ceiling and that they gotta move on to somebody else to break through that, to get to and win eventually, as would be the goal, a Super Bowl. But I still believe in Josh Allen. I'm not worried about the Bills. We got to see where they're at come December. It's going to take some time for all the new pieces to gel and for it to become a consistent week-to-week thing. So let's see where they're at come December. But division-wise, the Patriots are dead. The Dolphins are dead. The Jets are not dead, but in many ways a complete and total mess. So, and now you got with the Jets to not to go back to the Jets, but to go back to the Jets. Now you got a guy who wasn't calling the defense in your defensive coordinator, because Bob Saleh was calling the defense, who now is going to have to take over calling the defense because Saleh got fired, but you're also making this guy the interim head football coach. So he goes from being a defensive coordinator who's just scheming, working on the particulars week to week, helping to put together the game plans, to now doing all that, plus calling the plays, plus being the head football coach. So, I wouldn't have made Nate Hackett the interim coach either. I don't know who their special teams coordinator is. Maybe that would have been the right choice. I have no idea. But with Rodgers not looking like peak Rodgers, there's still a lot of just inconsistency and lack of cohesion on the offensive side of the ball. They're still going to win their fair complement of games, but in terms of competing for the division, if I'm a Bills fan, I'm not even remotely worried. As long as Josh Allen's healthy, I am not even close to concerned about any of these other teams standing in their way. So just keep doing what they're doing, stay patient, just keep trying to figure everything out, put the pieces together because they got a lot of new pieces, and try and get to where you're playing your most consistent ball come December. You're gelling come December. You get hot come December like they did last year. Ride that momentum into the playoffs and then see how far you can go. I'm not worried about the Bills. I am a little worried about the San Francisco 49ers. Now 2-3. They are third in their division, losing to the Cardinals, who are now also 2-3. Seattle at the top of the division. I guess, are they? No, they're 3-2. So I think, or no, yeah, they are. Arizona's 2-3. So yeah, not a division people were talking about. All four of these teams could be playoff caliber teams, and they have not performed up to expectations. A lot of injuries, but the 49ers, obviously McCaffrey has the Madden curse. That is a real thing. We need to accept and acknowledge it, just because there was a few years in there where it wasn't as bad as it had been in the past. Let's not sleep on the Madden curse. Other injuries, Brandon Ayuk starting to stir from his slumber, but they're just not clicking right now. I've not watched much of them, so I'm not going to sit here and break it down like I've watched every play that they've done this year, but just seeing what you see, looking at the record, watching the highlights, having watched the game where they lost to the Vikings, it's off. And I feel like everyone, the fans, maybe not the Niners fans, but just football fans in general, the prognosticators on TV, sports media people, everyone, there was this weird sort of vague consensus that the Niners might have a down year, and you could point to the Super Bowl hangover effect, but just on paper, there was no good reason that they shouldn't be right back in there at the very least in the championship game. Like, how many teams in the NFC would we have put on that level? We had questions about the Eagles, we had questions about the Cowboys, Detroit you would put up there. People before the season, Green Bay you might put up there. People may have put the Falcons up there, but even then, we need to see it before we can really buy into that. So it's just how many of these teams really think are going to overtake the 49ers? But here we are, and Seattle's overtaken them. Arizona's overtaken them in their own division. The Rams probably would have overtaken them by now too if they didn't have injuries all over the place. So the Niners, they might be fucked. I'm not going to say they're fucked. They're certainly not dead, but they might be in trouble. I don't think the Bills are in trouble. The Niners might be in trouble. It might just be a vibes thing. It might just be a Super Bowl hangover thing, and the Ayuk contract stuff and the McCaffrey injury, and just a bunch of little things kind of compiling into a big thing that just throws off the vibes of the season, and then you kind of just have a sideways year. So I don't think they're going to win 5 games, but I wouldn't be shocked now if they miss the playoffs, because it's manifesting the way everyone sort of seemed to be worried that it might. That just coming off the Super Bowl loss, the vibes might be weird and things just might go sideways for a multitude of reasons that you can't necessarily predict coming. But the Saints are dead. I'm done with the Saints. It's a Dennis Allen coach team led by Derek Carr. They can blow out 2 teams in the beginning of September all they want. I sat here and I said, listen, I'll believe it when I see it. When I see it in December and January, but the September Saints, I ain't buying into it. They're going to blow some teams out. Then they're going to be absolute dog shit. Everyone's going to fall asleep on them. then they're going to start clawing their way back towards the end of the season, and then people are going to start saying, oh, watch out for the Saints. They might sneak into the playoffs, and then they will miss the playoffs. So I ain't worried about the Saints. They're not dead, but functionally, in my mind, they're dead because that's what they're going to do. They're going to suck, and then they're going to get better, and then everyone's going to start having expectations again, and then they're going to flatten out at the end and miss the playoffs. So change my mind, New Orleans. Change my mind. I did start watching the condensed replay of the Bengals-Ravens game, which, just looking at the box score, absolutely insane. The Bengals defense continues to be absolute dog shit. They are 1-4. I know Caesar and I on the pick show last week, me more than him, struggled with deciding who to go with. I feel like he was pretty confident in the Ravens, but it felt like one of those games where it's like definitely a must-win for the Bengals, as much as a game can be must-win in the first weekend of October. But two teams that the Ravens kind of dug themselves into a hole, dug themselves out of a hole, but if they lose that game, then they're back under 500. And the Bengals staring down 1-4. And I feel like both offenses played like we need to win this fucking game. And the Ravens won the game. And as bad as the Bengals defense was, it may have been a special teams error that led to the loss. So that's a shame, but the Bengals, I don't know. Joe Burrow's playing out of his mind, but it is interesting. Like everybody, myself included, would put Joe Burrow in that top 4 category of quarterbacks with Lamar, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. But he's not elevating the team right now, and that's sort of the hallmark of that top quarterback tier is like even when things are as low as they are, like we could sit here and parse apart the Bills and what their problems are, but they're 3-2. They got a winning record. They're in a good position. They just lost 2 games to 2 playoff teams, 2 teams that won playoff games last year and are projected by most to be playoff contenders, championship contenders this year. And they were both road games. So like that's about as quality of a loss as you can have. Whereas the Bengals are 1-4 and they're getting beat by virtually everybody. So I'm not going to sit here and try and paint some narrative that Joe Burrow is secretly not a top 4 quarterback, but it is interesting that I feel like since that Super Bowl run, it's kind of gone downhill each year, and like they have the talent, and I don't know, it just feels like they should be winning more football games. But I'm not writing them off. I'm not writing Joe Burrow off. I'm more apt to write off the Bengals than Joe Burrow because their defense has just been playing atrocious, and there's only so much that Joe Burrow can do to mask that when your defense is that bad. But we'll see. We'll see again let's see where they're at through October into November. Can they put a run together here somewhere, get themselves back to 500, get themselves back in the mix because no one's running away with that division. The Steelers are stepping backwards. The Ravens are on the rise, but still with the 2 early losses. So it's still within your grasp. You're still only 2 wins back from the top of the division if you're the Bengals. So we'll see where they go. But Bengals, Ravens seemingly on 2 opposite trajectories, regardless of how well the quarterbacks played. And with the Ravens, that run game, they got the best run defense in the league, best run offense in the league. Now they have a similar thing with the Vikings where they're the only team that has faced less rushing attempts than the Vikings, so it's a smaller sample size, hence less yards, but they're only giving up 3 yards a carry. So I'm still apt to say the Ravens' run defense is very much for real. And then I was worried Derrick Henry would be washed this year, but he looks anything but. He looks incredibly dry, very dry, just running over people. And then you pair him with Lamar Jackson, and it's like, I remember when the move went through, my first thought, as someone that is a fan of Lamar, is a fan of Derrick Henry, appreciates the Ravens as a football team, thinking like, man, if this was like 2 years earlier, how unbelievably disgusting would this combination be? But now we're seeing the unbelievably disgusting combination of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and it's terrifying. I'm very glad the Vikings are not in the AFC. If you're an AFC team watching this right now, it's like, yeah, they're only 3-2, but there's some bad boys, man, and the defense playing the way it's playing, at least stopping the run. Come December, January, February, I always say it because everyone always says it, and everyone always says it because it's true. Come playoff time, come Super Bowl time, can you run the ball? Can you stop the run? Can you control the flow of the game? And the Ravens have a formula for that at the highest possible level right now. So if I'm in the AFC, if I'm a fan of an AFC team, I am terrified of the Ravens. But I guess the other kind of crazy explosive game of the weekend, Thursday Night Football, the game Al Michaels has been waiting years for. The Bucs and the Falcons put on a hell of a game, highly entertaining, ton of points, ton of drama. You love to see it. Kirk Chains swag surfing with the Atlanta crowd, throws for 509 yards, 4 touchdowns, I believe. One of the best games of his career, game-winning drive. And this is part of the Kirk experience. And I'm rooting for Kirk. And obviously not to do better than the Vikings, but I want to see him have success because I do like Kirk Cousins. But I want to say to Falcons fans that you may have missed this, you may have caught it live, but then forgotten about it because you got swept up in the OT and the game-winning drive. But what I thought was going to be the defining moment of the game, which is another key point in the Kirk Cousins experience. Inside 2 minutes, Falcons ball. I don't believe they had timeouts left. It was 3rd and long, and Kirk dumps it off. I saw that and I had flashbacks to the Giants playoff game where it's like you might not get the ball back after this. You might not get the ball back. You got to take a shot here. You got to at least try and get a chunk to set up a more manageable 4th down. But he doesn't. He just dumps it off. And maybe that's what the read said. Maybe that was the smart play for the way the play developed. But there will come a time when Kirk will be conservative Kirk, and it will cost them, and the Falcons fans will then have to understand that part of the experience. Because Kirk will – listen, people talk about primetime Kirk. To me, primetime Kirk, he's been dealing. He beat the 49ers in primetime last year. He is was on a win streak for Monday night wins. He has – a multitude under his belt, his record on Thursday Night Football. Primetime Kirk, the narrative that he can't perform in primetime, can't perform on Monday nights, needs to be just washed away from history because it is so entirely irrelevant now. The idea that he doesn't come through in the clutch needs to be completely washed from history because it is not irrelevant, or it's not relevant at all anymore. That may be a Freudian slip because come the playoffs, that's the only bugaboo left for him is can he string together playoff wins? Can he lead a true run to a Super Bowl? But if we're talking the regular season, I don't care if it's prime time. I don't care if it's Monday night. I don't care if it's deep in the 4th quarter, overtime, the heat is on, whatever the case may be. I have seen Kirk Cousins come through in the clutch in big games in prime time on Monday nights enough to know that he's fully capable. And you go back to 2022, thrived under the crucible of needing a late game drive, needing to go down to tie, needing to go down to take the lead. So a lot to love about the Kirk Cousins experience, but there will be a key moment where he will be conservative in a key situation, and it will cost Atlanta. And I implore the Falcons fans, go back and watch that game and see that moment. Watch that play over and over again, that dump off on 3rd and long. Internalize it, because you need to be prepared for when it costs you a game, because it will. I guarantee it. Sorry, Kirk. I still love you, baby. But last thing I want to talk about, some other news from today. Well, I guess we'll stay in the NFC South real quick, go back to the Saints. Derek Carr is going to be out several weeks. So the Saints, I already said they were dead. This just makes them more dead. But another quarterback news, week 6, the New England Patriots will start Drake May at quarterback. So let's pour one out for Drake May. Let's pour one out for his career, because they are about to fuck him up. If they sat him the whole year, he might have had a chance there. But behind that offensive line, just pour one out for Drake May. Pour one out for him. He's seems like a good kid, got a lot of talent, but they're about to kill him. Kevin O'Connell said this last week. Organizations fail young quarterbacks before young quarterbacks fail organizations. And the New England Patriots are about to make a fatal error by forcing this. And I understand. Jacoby Brissett has been unwatchable. Football is an entertainment commodity. You are entertaining the fans. That's where the money is made. But fans will understand. We need to protect the young quarterback, develop the young quarterback. It's going to be a year of bad, unwatchable football. Just eat it, so we can have then 15 years of high-octane, exciting offense by a young quarterback who was developed properly and put in a position to be successful. By starting him here in week 6, it's better than starting him week 1, but starting him here week 6, they are risking completely fucking up this dude's career. And yes, you could point around and say Caleb Williams is starting to figure it out. Jaden Daniels is in the fucking MVP conversation right now. Bo Nix had a great game this past week. There's guys out there that you could have drafted that are playing well, and our guy that we drafted, we're playing it safe. You know, maybe let's open up the Christmas present. Let's throw away the bubble wrap and see what we got in this guy. But I'm telling you, they do not have the pieces in place. They do not have the infrastructure on the field, in the coaching staff, for this kid to be successful this year. And now mentally, hopefully, maybe he's able to go through a year or two of being complete garbage. Josh Allen was complete garbage for 2 years, turns into top 4 MVP caliber guy because mentally he had what it takes to stick through that. So hopefully, for Drake May's sake, for the fans' sake, for the organization's sake, he has that same quality. But they are risking everything on just, we need to play more entertaining football come week 6 of this season, that we're probably not going to go anywhere either way. You're not going to go anywhere either way. Don't take this risk. It's not the entertainment of 3/4 of one season where you know you're not going to be good anyway is not worth risking the future of your young franchise quarterback. Don't do it. Don't start him. Sit him for the year. Let him learn. Let him watch. Ride it out with Jacoby Brissett. Be terrible. It's fine. And figure out what you're going to do next year. Do not put this kid in the game. You are risking seriously fucking up his career. Do not do it. Drake May, I'm sorry this happened to you, bro. But that's all. Short episode this week. Like I said, I'm going to try and get the Buffalorian on, do a deeper dive with what's going on behind the scenes with the Bills from a Bills fan perspective. What are we on the outside missing? Because, again, I'm not the biggest Sean McDermott hater. I think he's a good football coach. Bills fans want him fired. What do they see that we don't see from the outside? I'm going to try and get him on. Probably sit down tomorrow and record the pick show with Caesar. We'll see how he did this past week. We'll see how many games we disagree on this week. But more stuff coming up for you very soon. Thanks for tuning in on a Let Me Talk to You Tuesday. Till next time, take it easy, football heads.